Coming up, what are the most impressive things the D-backs have done post All-Star break, and which team should be considered the biggest sleeper to take down the Yankees and the Houston Astros of the American League? Sully Baseball tells us next.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day you're listening to. The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer, so please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, just follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 for my personal account. Look up the show account, Locked On Diamondbacks, on both Twitter and Instagram for the podcast handle. Look up Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. You can see my very sunburned face right now if you head to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. Would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. Sully Baseball is going to tell us, he's going to make a case for who he thinks is the biggest sleeper in the American League, potentially the biggest challenger to the Yankees and Astros in the American League playoffs. Sully Baseball is going to tell us that next. But I first want to talk about the D-backs and their second half and some things that have really impressed me about the D-backs in their second half so far, because the D-backs, in case you don't know, they're playing really good baseball post All-Star break. They were 40-52 at the break, 12 games below 500. But since the All-Star break, they're 13-9, 4 games above 500. They've scored 110 runs and only allowed 75. The D-backs are playing really good baseball since the All-Star break. And I think they've won 5 of 7 series, maybe 4 or 6, maybe 5 of 7, but they are absolutely playing well since the All-Star break. So what are 4 things they're doing that are really impressing me right now post All-Star break? Well, the first one, the frontline duo looking like a frontline duo, because Zach Gallen and Meryl Kelly have been dominant forces since the All-Star break. And 5 starts for Zach Gallen, 1.14 ERA, a .73 whip, a 150 average allowed, and 31 strikeouts to just 7 walks. And 3 of the 5 starts post All-Star break, Gallen has pitched into the 7th with 0 earned runs and at least 6 strikeouts 3 times in 3 of his 5 starts. 7 innings, no earned runs, and at least 6 strikeouts. Absolute dominant stuff from a guy we consider the ace of the staff. And Meryl Kelly, he's been making his case to be the ace of the staff all season, because he's been someone that's been performing pretty well for this D-backs team from day one, from the first start of the season. Meryl Kelly, you could probably put through line as maybe the best D-back starter so far this season. And it's continued in the second half, because even though Gallen's been probably better in the second half of the season, still Kelly's right there in terms of dominance. A 1.65 ERA in 4 starts, 0.85 whip, a 183 average allowed, and 26 strikeouts to just 6 walks allowed. Kelly has pitched into the 7th in 3 of his 4 starts and has allowed no more than 2 earned runs in 3 of those 4 starts. So he's been incredible. The rotation ERA as a whole in the second half of the season is 3.29. So this D-backs frontline rotation is looking good. And if guys like Tommy Henry can continue to perform well, maybe Madison Bumgarner could get back on track. You look at the next season, like, you got 2 members in your rotation figured out. They are pitching like frontline starters, even though they might not be considered aces, you know, in terms of the lexicon of talking about the best rotations and best duos in baseball. But if Gallen and Kelly pitch like this again next year, I've already made the case that they're a top 10 duo with how they performed this season. And if they could do it again next year, then they could probably crack that top 7, top 5 duos in all of baseball. So having a rotation where 2 of the 5 members is already figured out heading into next season, that's great stuff for the D-backs. And Gallen and Meryl Kelly have been dominant post All-Star break. The second thing I've liked really, the second thing that's been really impressive post All-Star break, the bullpen not blowing games. We know the D-backs bullpen is terrible. It's been terrible for most of the season, but in the second half, it has not been that way, because Kyle Nelson, Ian Kennedy, Mark Melancon, Joe Mantiply, Noah Ramirez. That's over 40 innings pitched in the second half of the season. Only 6 earned runs allowed from those 5 guys so far in the second half. The bullpen has been great at not allowing inherited runners to score and not allowing any runners to score, their own runners or someone else's runners when they enter the game. The bullpen ERA the second half so far, 2.99. You know what it was in the first half? 4.33. This bullpen has taken a major leap. Their whip went from 1.34 to 1.25 in the second half. Their strikeouts per 9 went from 7.6 to 9 flat in the second half. Right now, in the second half of the season, the Dbacks have the 4th best National League ERA in terms of their whole pitching staff, 4th best National League ERA, 2nd best whip, and 2nd best average allowed. This Dbacks pitching staff is performing really well in the second half of the season. And when you have those 5 guys already, if the Dbacks can figure out 1 or 2 other young pitchers, if they could get another pitcher or 2 from their system internally, show some flashes this year, then you head into next year and you say, all right, we at least got Nelson, we at least got Joe Mantiply, maybe Ian Kennedy comes back, maybe Noah Ramirez comes back, and then we take 2 of those young guys from this year and you're like, all right, we got at least half a bullpen ready to go for next year. Maybe you got 4 to 6 arms that we can rely on heading into next season. And the Dbacks haven't had 4 to 6 arms of reliable relievers in quite some time. So heading into next year, if we could have a little bit of trust and a little bit of confidence in a handful of relievers from this bullpen, that will go a long way. And so far in the second half of the season, the Dbacks got some relievers that are stepping up. The third thing that's been really impressive to me the second half of this D-back season is the newcomers putting in work. And specifically, I'm talking about Emmanuel Rivera and Tommy Henry, because those two have been real bright spots for Arizona since the second half. Because Rivera, we've all talked about Rivera. We all hated that trade at the time, Luke Weaver for Rivera, because we thought Rivera were just going to be a platoon guy, taking bats away from Josh Rojas. And in reality, they both played together a lot. There's been a lot of games where Rojas and Rivera have played together. And it seems like whenever Rivera's going off, so has Rojas. But Rivera, since coming over to Arizona, has completely lit it up in Chase Field. He's got 357 average and over 1,300 OPS in Arizona with 4 home runs. He's been doing it all at the plate and has made some pretty nice defensive plays as well at the diamond. And then you look at Tommy Henry, like, he hasn't been elite. He hasn't been electric. He hasn't been like Jacob deGrom. But considering my expectations for him when the D-backs called him up, it wasn't very high. And he's, I don't want to say shattered, but he's definitely played above expectations that I've had for him, because he's gotten at least 5 innings pitched in all 3 of his starts. And in 2 of those starts, he's allowed 3 earned runs or fewer. So Tommy Henry hasn't been bad at all. Some of his breaking pitches have been nasty. I saw a Pitching Ninja post a clip of one of the breaking balls by Tommy Henry. Like, he might not be a fastball kind of a guy. He might not be a high velo guy, but if he can really work his off-speed pitches with that fastball, that low 90s fastball, then this is someone that could be a pretty effective starter. And as of right now, like, I want to see him get more starts throughout the rest of this season. And if he performs the rest of this season, then why not give Tommy Henry the first crack as the number 4, number 5 starter next year in the rotation? I wouldn't mind that at all. So right now, the newcomers, Emmanuel Rivera, Tommy Henry, they're making me recalibrate how I fit them into the D-backs future. Because right now I'm looking at Tommy Henry as, you know, maybe that number 4, number 5 starter for next season. Emmanuel Rivera, he's looking like a guy that should get at bats next season as well, considering his age. He's a guy in his late 20s, not too old. It's like 26, 27. So I wouldn't mind both those guys getting more opportunity as the season ends. And then we'll see for next year how those 2 guys play into the D-backs future. And then the last thing I want to discuss that's been really impressive to me post All-Star break is the sluggers slugging. Christian Walker, Dalton Varsho, and Carson Kelly are 3 of the biggest D-back sluggers in their lineup. Christian Walker has been hitting for power all season, but Dalton Varsho and Carson Kelly haven't done it a ton. But recently, post All-Star break, all 3 of those guys have really tapped into that power department, because Dalton Varsho, we've been talking about it last year. He struggled in the first half. Post All-Star break, it was a different Dalton Varsho. This year, his first half numbers were pretty much similar to his season numbers last year. So I've been making the case that if Dalton Varsho sees that uptick in production once again post All-Star break, then this guy's going to put up All-Star level numbers. And that's what he's been doing post All-Star break. 4 home runs, 2 doubles, and a .535 slugging percentage in the second half. It was a .409 slugging percentage in the first half. And he's not the only one, because Carson Kelly, since coming back from injury, has been great. And in the second half of the season, Carson Kelly, 6 doubles, 2 home runs, and his slugging percentage has went from 328 to 539, also on a tear. And then Christian Walker, he's been hitting home runs all season, but even in the second half, his slugging percentage has gone up. Overall, his contact numbers have gone up. He's got 5 home runs and 5 doubles in the second half of the season. The sluggers for the D-backs are slugging, and those are 4 big things that have really impressed me from the D-backs during the second half of the season.